Yes, a
Yeah.
good one. I mean,
Yep. And there anymore because the field, but for him to have. All right, 6:30, we will call the May 12th, 2025 Lake Elmo Planning Commission meeting to order at 6:30. First item of business is to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
All right, next item is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. If I can get a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda for the May 12th meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay. Donna and Charles, all in favor?
aye.
And motion passed. Agenda's approved. Next item is to approve the minutes of April 14th, 2025. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agendas as April 14th, 2025.
Approve the minutes?
The minutes, the
Yep.
minutes, I'm sorry, yeah, the minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The minutes are approved. All right. No public hearing tonight. Next item is unfinished business, is the item tabled from our 414 meeting.
All right, good evening and thank you, Chair and members of the commission. So as you all know, this item was tabled on the April 14th meeting where we had a public hearing and a discussion. Since that time, the developer, M&I Homes and Rachel Development have resubmitted a new plan set for the city's review after some discussion with staff. And we have reviewed that, and so in this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about what's changed and then provide a recommendation to move forward. I'm gonna cover a little bit of the same ground just as a refresher so that we're all on the same page. So as you will remember, we have 3 different requests in front of the city with this project. Right now, we have a preliminary plat, a planned unit development, and in particular, the flexibilities that would be received through that are to have private roads and some bulk standards flexibility we can talk about. And lastly, a comprehensive plan amendment, and you can see the location and the project site on the screen. So as an overview, we have 4 different parcels constituting almost 20 acres. All of that land is buildable and was previously mass graded in a former phase of Inwood. From a zoning perspective, this area is currently zoned high-density residential, and that's how this project is proposed to move forward with high-density residential base zoning and a planned unit development overlay. Currently, there is no flexibility that was provided through the prior phases of the Inwood development, and this site is, as you know, a very small part is in the shoreland. Looking at the comprehensive plan, we do have a comprehensive plan amendment in front of us, and pretty much what that would do is to bring this area back to what it was in the 2030 comprehensive plan, which was what is now the city's high-density residential district. Right now, we have 3 different future land use categories. The developer is proposing to just have one with a maximum of 15 units per acre. A little bit of background again here. The initial Inwood preliminary plat and master planned PUD was approved in December of 2014 by the city. At that time, the city also did environmental review, and what you see on the screen was what was initially planned at the time of that approval in 2014. Since the 2014 approval, the single-family portions of the Inwood development were built between 2015 and 17. And then Quick Trip also was part of that commercial plan development. Here's a little bit of a close-up, and you can see in the close-up south of 5th Street North. Again, we were at the time looking at generally the same land uses and at approximately the same density or intensity as the developer is currently proposing. And here's just another figure from the Inwood project in 2014. So this image on the screen is what the developer had initially prepared for the city and submitted to the city. And this is what we discussed at our last meeting in April. And the developer has, as I mentioned, made some changes. So I'm going to the next slide with the revised site layout. The primary thing that I would note to you, the primary change is that there is now a street that kind of runs through the center of that townhome area on the east side of Island Trail. That's a little bit more of a traditional street style, I suppose. They're all private streets as proposed, but that provides a little better connectivity through the site. And we'll talk about some of the other benefits to that as well. The developers also removed a couple of those stub drives that are a challenge from an engineering and fire service perspective. So on the screen now you can see the landscaping plan. This is the same revised plan but with some landscaping on it, and you'll see that in that street that goes through the development there's a better tree spacing. That is the only area where this development is able to meet that boulevard tree spacing requirement of 50 feet. So they're doing better at meeting that standard with this revision. Going back to our PUD minimum criteria, this development does meet those criteria. It's over 5 acres, it's providing open space, and it's providing a street grid that maintains our existing layout of the area. There are several PUD objectives that the Planning Commission can use to support the project as it would appear to meet them. And we can talk about those if you have questions. Preliminary plat review, so again, we looked at, as we've talked about, the land uses proposed, bulk standards, which is setbacks and things like that, tree preservation and landscaping, grading, public infrastructure, and parkland dedication. So going back to our setbacks and lot area minimums, this is virtually the same slide as last time that we looked at this. They're still requesting flexibility to have these attached townhomes on their own lots. This is pretty common with this form of development because the developer wants to plat individual lots over the units so that they're all owner occupied, but they have a common open space that's maintained through an HOA. So naturally there is some need for flexibility with that way, that method of platting. We also have private streets, so we are looking at some flexibility though to those setbacks for front and rear yards for the units. We're also looking at a request for flexibility from the curb along 5th Street North to the front of the units that are along Fifth Street North. The city has a 40-foot setback, and at a minimum, we're looking at near 30 feet. And then there isn't, on the apartment side of things, there is one request for flexibility, which is the lot area being just a little too small for the number of units. So that is kind of a summary of the flexibilities that are being requested. So last time I presented this slide, the project had two different types of attached townhome units. The one on the left side of the slide is no longer being proposed by the developer, so all of the units would be those that are on the right side. That's an attached townhome building that has, it's basically double fronted, meaning that the front of the unit is on a different side than the rear, the garage, which is on the rear of the unit. So they're double loaded, kind of. All right, so I do want to talk about some specific performance standards that are in the city's ordinance. For single-family attached townhomes in the high-density residential area, buildings have to be smaller than 10 attached units, which in this case they are. Public street frontage is required unless the development requests a conditional use permit. That is satisfied through the planned unit development that's requested by the developer. No parking is allowed in front yards, and that has been addressed through only having these double fronted units. And lastly, shared open spaces have to be at least 300 square feet per unit, which is exceeded by the attached townhome development as proposed. For multifamily dwellings, parking cannot be located in any front yard areas, which it is not. And common open spaces have to be at least 200 square feet per unit, which is being proposed. Getting into the design standards review, this is the city's design standards manual. It looks at both site and building design. When we look at just the attached townhome units, looking at design standards, so building placement, buildings and entrances are oriented towards the street where possible. Interior to the development, the building entrances aren't really, it's not possible to have all of them oriented directly onto a street, and so they are facing a public or open space. It's a private development, but it's a common area. For streetscaping, you have concrete sidewalks that don't run along a public street, but are like running throughout the development, providing good connectivity. Buildings along that street running through the development are located with on the streets. And then site furnishings have been provided on the site plans, and the developer can talk a little bit about how the open space has been modified to do that. As mentioned, overstory trees now do meet the tree spacing requirement in that street that's been proposed through the development, but the tree spacing along the other parts of the private streets still requires some flexibility. And there is enough parking to meet the city's standards in the areas where parking is acceptable. However, staff do recommend converting the 90-degree angled stalls, which you can see on this site plan, if I can get the cursor to show up. There's a few 90-degree stalls that are proposed throughout the development here and here. These are in areas that are going to be a little bit tough from a circulation perspective. There are some concerns with people pulling out and coming around a corner at the same time. So staff are recommending that those be removed and replaced with parallel parking bump outs elsewhere, maybe not in turning areas where there may be turning movements. Again, you can see the units that were previously reviewed last time. You're only looking at the units on the bottom part of this slide. So design standards for these style of units, buildings have to be consistent with their architecture throughout the project, which is the case here. Parking should be either rear loaded or recessed, which these units are rear loaded. Building materials, last time we did mention that vinyl siding is not allowed as a primary material in the HDR, the high density residential district, and that is still proposed. So the developer has submitted a little bit more detail on what's proposed, and it might be tough to see on the screens here, but there is differentiation in the coloring on the facades in this image. There's a purple color you can see, maybe it's easiest to see on these side elevations. That purple color is what would be the vinyl. And the white color here is proposed as a fiber cement board and batten siding. Fiber cement is an allowed product under the city's design standards manual, but vinyl, as a reminder, is not. And so a breakdown was provided. And I've shown that on the next slide here. So a breakdown was provided on the right. I don't expect everyone to read everything on this slide. In total, the elevations kind of fluctuate in terms of how much vinyl there is as a percent of the facade. The vinyl ranges from 30% to 70%, depending on the side of the building that you're looking at. On the left side of the slide is the text directly from the city's design standard manual. The top point on this slide, E, says that primary building materials for residential structures shall include brick, finished wood, fiber cement, stone, quality materials, glass, cast stone, or precast concrete panels with aggregate banding, texturing, or other similar decorative finish. And then the bottom bullet point G mentions prohibited materials, which includes vinyl siding. So that's what we're looking at when we provide that direction or guidance. Looking at the apartment building, this one's a little bit more straightforward from a design review perspective. The building placement is acceptable within the area that is proposed. The streetscaping is pretty good, meeting the city's standards for connectivity to sidewalks and things like that. The landscaping is exceeding the minimum requirements, and the parking is positioned interior to the site. So here's a rendering again of that apartment building proposed on the west side of the development. In terms of the actual building's design, the facades do have articulation and not a lot of blank space, so that is meeting the city's requirements. The building materials are generally consistent with those that are allowed. The mass and the scale of the building the building's located in an area where there's a transition from strictly commercial to residential. And the other elements of the building do meet the code as well. Just a reminder about parkland dedication. There is a credit that was provided to the developer through a previous phase of Inwood, so that would be deducted from any cash that's required through this project through a cash in lieu fee. For tree preservation, the one tree removal went down to none, so no trees are proposed to be removed through this project, so no mitigation is needed. Here again is a reminder of that landscape plan, and one of the things that you'll notice on the plan as a result of the redesign, if I can get the cursor to show up again.
Yeah.
You can see this open space here that's been reoriented, I'll call it, because of the way that this street moves through the property. This would be the communal open space. It's been programmed a little bit more by the developer, and it's a little bit more of a community amenity in this case as it's been revised. All right, so in terms of a landscaping review, the overall number of plantings has been met by the developer. There are fewer plantings now in areas with spatial constraints, meaning they're not located in things like drainage swales or in areas that might be tight. In terms of buffering as well, we did talk about buffering from the use to the south, the Bremer Financial, where there's a pretty large parking lot. The developer's redesign has allowed for some tree plantings along that southern property boundary to help screen that use. Parking, in sum, the parking proposed with this project meets the city's requirements for both stalls per unit and visitor stalls. Access and circulation continue to be a point of review. In this case, the existing access points along 5th Street North are fixed, and they're aligned now on the Island Trail, so that's good. And then we're still working through other engineering standards as at this point in the game. A number of review comments were received on this project, and These are all the review memos that we have attached to the staff report. Some of these review comments are not reacting to the current redesign. The project is under engineering review right now, and we will expect to receive updated engineering comments before we bring it to the city council for their review. On this slide, I've got the PUD flexibilities all kind of summarized on one page. And you can see a couple of them have been scratched off with strike through because they're no longer needed as a flexibility as a result of the redesign. So we are down from, we'll call that 9 to 7. And in addition to that, staff had some design-related concerns that we've again gone through, and with the redesign plans, scratched off a number of them. What I mentioned though to you are still concerns, the parallel parking instead of the 90-degree angled parking. One thing that I didn't mention is it seems like we can have some better sidewalk connectivity on the southeast and southwest corners of the attached townhome area. That would help pedestrian circulation to or through the site. And then lastly, we did talk about vinyl siding. So findings can be made to support a recommendation for this project. Staff are considering the revisions that have been made to date, supportive of the project with conditions. Okay, so we can talk about findings if you have any questions. The options that the city has at this stage, or the planning commission has, are to make a recommendation to council for approval or denial. If approval, staff are recommending conditions for that. I don't recommend that we table the project at this stage. I think we've gotten quite a bit more information. And our statutory deadline is June 14th as a result of our review window here. And if the city does approve the project, staff at this time are recommending 15 different conditions for approval. Many of them are standard conditions, like meeting review memos and getting permits or paying fees. There are some unique conditions to this project that you'll see are related to those design concerns. So parking, sidewalk connectivity, and vinyl siding. As a reminder, we did have a public hearing at our last meeting after we posted that meeting in the paper and sent mailed notice. Generally speaking, the public did have some comments. Most of them were related to traffic, whether it be the volume or the speed, crossing opportunities along Fifth Street North or other streets. And there were also some comments on stormwater reuse at that meeting too. So that brings me to my recommendation. Staff are comfortable at this point recommending approval of the project. That's the preliminary plat, PUD, and comprehensive plan amendment with conditions. So I have some example motions on the screen for you, and I am happy to take your question. I would note that we have the developer here, and they do have a presentation as well to share with you some of the changes.
Can you go back to the schematic design?
Yep.
Not the profiles, but just of the overall.
The overall development.
When we're talking about sidewalk access in the southeast and southwest corners.
Yep. So is the question kind of what am I talking about?
Yeah.
Sure. So, got the cursor showing here. So starting on the southwest side, we've got a sidewalk that kind of runs down in this area here and then through this open space. It kind of stops right here. And so what I'm saying when I'm looking for a connection is just to move that, to get a sidewalk connection over to the sidewalk
Sure.
along Island Trail. On the southeast side of the development, we do have a sidewalk that serves the front of these units.
Mm-hmm.
It stops right here. It's got a connection up to Fifth Street up here. But when I'm talking about that connectivity, what I'm thinking is the sidewalk could be potentially connected back over to Fifth Street North a little bit further
Sure.
to the east and south of the existing trees. Of course, that's a design question, is if it can be done. I think it can be done, but the question could be, can it be done without removing any trees? I'm not sure.
What are crosswalks over to the park from the development? Is that would that lie on the city?
Yeah, I'd be-
Responsibility with our new sidewalk guidance?
Yeah, so Chair,
Okay.
good question. I would be looking towards the engineering department, public works department to
To
see
take-
if there are areas where there may be, an alignment with the crosswalk policy.
All right. Any other questions for Nathan?
Yeah, back on your chart, Nathan, I know you went through at the very end with what you are still requesting. But I just want to go back and make sure you guys are okay with the fact that the setbacks, that's a huge difference from what's required and what there is.
Yep.
And you guys are okay with that?
Yeah, staff are comfortable with the setbacks that are proposed and where the reason for that is that functionally we have setbacks that are more in line with what the code requires. But because of the way that these lots are platted, the boundaries the boundaries around each individual unit, the way that they're drawn, it's really close to the unit, and it allows for each unit to kind of be on its own lot, so it can be owner occupied. But
Okay.
the rest of the area around the unit can be,
Okay, I just want to make sure you
HOA.
guys were comfortable with that. And there was a comment about the space was a little bit too small for the number of apartments.
yeah, so that has to do with the minimum lot area on a per unit basis. But another good question, I think staff are comfortable with the amount of open space provided in the overall development for all of the units.
Okay, and my last one is, as usual, trees.
Yeah.
That's always my thing. The fact that there's areas where it's not meeting the number of trees.
Yeah,
I
that-
understand that it's a dense unit with dense numbers, but it's still just,
It's a good question and something that staff have kind of looked at. And the area where the development's not meeting the overstory tree requirement, and as a refresher, it's a tree every 50 feet along a road.
right.
And where that gets tough is when we've got these private streets that have a bunch of driveways on them. And so you can't really fit the trees in between the units, the driveways for each unit. And so the trees are spaced on either side of the building.
I see that.
And then in the area where you've got all of the driveways, I think the developer is intending to plant, we'll call it landscaping that doesn't have as deep of roots. So
Right,
it won't
I get you.
impact basically there's water services running in those areas as well.
You go forward one slide, Nathan.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's clear.
So that was the old design.
No, that's the old
Here's
design.
the
All
new-
right,
here's
all
the
right.
new
I'll have to be,
Just squint a little bit.
I do that every day anyway.
So Jason, quick question. I'm not sure if I caught the staff recommendation as it relates to the vinyl siding and deviating from the city building standards that we've had.
Yeah, so a good question, Commissioner. Staff are not supportive at this time of deviating from the vinyl requirement. That is a policy decision that the city planning commission or city council can make. So if there's thoughts on that, we're certainly happy to take those into consideration.
The assumption is it's a cost issue, right?
Yeah, and so
From the
you'll wanna hear
builder's
that from,
perspective,
you'll wanna
yeah.
ask the developer
Yes,
as well.
I will.
Yep.
Nathan, quick question. It's more of a general question, but I think it applies here. When calculating impervious surface, is there any credit for stormwater retainage ponds in that impervious surface calculation? Or is it just impervious surface is impervious surface, doesn't matter where the stormwater's going?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's kind of two ways that we'll often look at impervious. The one way is just kind of from a planning lens, it's how intense is the use of the site. In this case, the attached townhome area is like 52% impervious on a whole. And then on a per unit basis, it's because we have these tiny lot areas, they're, 80 to 84%
Sure.
at the high end.
Yeah, jacks it up. Okay.
So the other way that cities will look at impervious is to be able to understand what amount of stormwater ponding is required. And that's why the developers have to submit a stormwater, basically a report on that. And so that's where we'll take into consideration all of the impervious that's shown, but they don't necessarily receive a credit for
Okay,
stormwater.
for stormwater ponds, okay, all right, thanks.
Yep.
I have a question pertaining to the traffic and the access. I see here that the city engineer anticipates a need for the turn lanes. Has that been worked into the plan for the Island Trail?
Yes, so there, the city engineer does have that comment in the engineering memo. We've communicated that one to the developer, and what staff are recommending is a conditional approval that the development plans have to be revised to be consistent with the engineering memo.
I've got a few quick questions. First off, on the agenda, it's 272 homes is what that adds up to, but really that's only 271, so they did take one away.
They did take one away, yep, that's
Okay.
correct.
And just to correct the record, Washington County also did send a letter March 7th of 2025, just saying this area, they reviewed it, the development pros is located in a DWSMA and is known area of PFAS contamination. Best management practices as outlined by MDH and MPCA should be implemented to protect public health. So that wasn't listed in the articles that you had up on the screen. So I just wanted to make sure that you had that included somehow in your presentation to make sure it's all up to the snuff. I did not see it on that. It was from
County
Washington.
staff indicated there were no comments on the comprehensive plan amendment is what I have on my
On the
slide here.
comprehensive plan, but on the project itself, they did have something.
They did, and they were provided in the packet, and
Okay.
I would tell you that it didn't look like they were necessarily material to the land use review. Of
Land
course,
use,
they're
right.
important, yeah.
Okay, very fine. And once again, I always worry about the people that live around the area, as you well know. And as I recall, they really had concerns about the height of the building, the traffic, safety, pedestrian crossings, parking, water supply, loss of green space, and congestion. And I believe the developer had an LLC that did everything on the traffic thing, and it said that hasn't changed. And if you're gonna be adding 500 more people to that area, it's going to change. So any of the safety improvements need to be made. And trees, of course, I like the trees, so that's good too. And how large is that supposed green space that they have? And with the HOA, they're supposed to pile snow somewhere in the winter and then haul it out. Do you have any idea where they're gonna pile snow on from their private streets?
I will let the developer speak to that question. And I did measure the open space just in this, we'll call it kind of triangular area south of that newer street, and it's about an acre in area. So. There's more open space throughout the development, but that one area, I was curious what the size was.
And the vinyl siding is not appropriate at all. I mean, we're supposed to have quality development, and people are gonna be buying these units, I understand. These are gonna be for sale, they're not rentals.
My understanding is they would be owner occupied, yep.
So you want top quality on whatever you're gonna be selling.
I'm going to go back to the parking. How would you recommend, I mean, these are so tight and so far from all the units. Where would you put guest parking, or how would you accommodate parallel parking in there when there's not
Yeah,
a
a
lot
good
of
question.
space?
So that new street I'll call it Street C, it's the one that kind of, bring the cursor
Is that
up
wide
again.
enough for parallel parking?
Yes, this
Okay.
is wide enough for parallel parking, so that's a start in
That's
terms
allowed
of,
by the fire department?
correct, yes,
Okay.
we've worked with engineering, public works, and fire. The other thing is you could add parallel parking along the south side of this street on this part of the development. It might eat into the area where you can have tree plantings, but that is an option to explore.
Hate to trade the trees for parking, but the parking looks very inconvenient for guest parking here.
You've got, these are all double garages, correct?
Yeah, so Chair, to your question,
You've
Yep.
so you've at least got 2 or 4 in your driveway.
there's a total of 2 parking spaces in each unit, and then there would be 2 available in the driveway.
In the driveway?
Yep.
All right, should we hear from the developer? Thank you, Nathan.
Thanks, Nathan.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I'm Emily Becker with MI Homes. Thank you so much for giving us the time for the reconsideration of this request. We really do appreciate it. Nathan did a great job. I'm just gonna reiterate some points, go over some of the changes that we did. So the major change probably is a 28-foot wide street through the center of the development. So that really is going to orient the fronts of the townhomes towards the entrance. It is gonna give a better look and feel for the development as a whole. Reluctantly, it was a good recommendation. We don't like to admit it, but you guys did good. It's gonna prevent just going through the development and seeing a sea of driveways. So did that, aligned the access points on the east and west of Island Trail. We did add a landscape feature in the center of the development, and then in the entrance, we are going to try and mimic the entrance of the Inwood single-family residential area, make it look nice. As Nathan mentioned, the stub streets are removed, and we are going to all city collection rear-loaded townhomes. This is the entrance of the current Inwood single-family residential area that I had mentioned that we are going to do our best to mimic for the townhome and apartment sites. That's just the plan that you had previously reviewed. Island Trail, so Nathan had mentioned that within the engineer memo, there was a recommendation that there be turn lanes going to both the apartment site and the main townhome site. It does say that because there's more than 35 units, that turn lane is warranted. However, that's not actually in the engineering standards memo, so we are going to try and contest that. We don't feel like a turn lane is warranted. We did plan, obviously, for, as we had mentioned in the last meeting, we had planned for this amount of multifamily units with the preliminary plat for the Inwood development as a whole. And we designed and constructed this street, and we really don't want to have to rip up everything that we've already done and create turn lanes. I'll go into this a little bit more, but we did hire a traffic engineer that doesn't feel that turn lanes are actually warranted for this development. She feels like the cost would much outweigh the benefit of any turn lanes. And then I know that there was concern about traffic from the existing Inwood residential, single-family residential area. Island Trail is designed as a collector road, so it is designed to handle a significant amount of traffic. I'll go into how much traffic that this proposed development will actually create into that development. It's not a significant amount. This is just going over that traffic analysis that was included within your packet. It is significantly lower than what was actually anticipated with the 2014 study. As you can see, the numbers here, we're lower almost as much as 42%. Within the Island Trail, so the area is going into the single-family residential portion of Inwood, really only generating 57 trips within that area. Most of the traffic that is going to be generated from this development is going to be on Inwood Avenue, as you can see, with 1,460 trips a day, and then 5th Street with about 1,800 trips a day. In her summary and conclusions, she does outline that it is less intense than what the 2014 traffic study had anticipated. There are no adverse traffic impacts. It is within the planned volume capacities for the roadway types, and most of the traffic is going to be going to the south with the I-94 area and to the west with I-694. So design comments, I know that was kind of a big point of discussion. So respectfully, we do have a different interpretation of the design guidelines. Staff is saying that vinyl is completely prohibited. However, the design guidelines say that vinyl is prohibited as the primary facade material. We would concede a little bit, and we would agree to do hardy on the board and batten area. So that's the white area of the townhomes. And all in all, overall, it's 42.6% of the entire facade, with only 33.7% of the front and 37.4% of the rear. We are extremely hesitant and really do not want to do hardy on the entire facade. Number one, gonna be honest, it's financial reasons. For the end units, it's $9,000 more per unit. That's significant. And also, our buyers really don't see an actual value in that, to be honest. Actually, on the other end of the spectrum, it's more maintenance. So you have to paint it, you have to caulk it in order to prevent moisture from actually letting it to deteriorate. So that also adds to the HOA maintenance fees, which again decreases value. Also, vinyl just has a higher energy rating. So we would ask that, you know, we do vinyl in that kind of like purple blue area, and then we would agree to do hardy in the board and batten area. So that's all I have, and if you have any other questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Island Trail, you can get out onto Eagle Point Boulevard on that street? Looks like it goes through.
Yeah.
So they would have 2 exit points
Mhm.
they could get. Okay.
Go back to your vinyl slide, your vinyl siding slide. So vinyl's 42.6, but it would still be the primary material, right?
I would argue that 42.6% is not primary. I would say anything over 50 is primary. That is, I totally understand that's up for
Yeah.
interpretation. It's subjective. It's not a
Right.
complete.
I mean, what I'm saying is like, okay, you've got windows, you've got board and batten,
Yeah.
you've got other
So
trims.
what is
so-
over 50%?
I think that the board, well, the combination of board and batten and the windows and doors would be over 50%.
Are there vinyl clad windows?
No, no, they would, yeah.
First of all, I want to say I appreciate you going back and reworking and giving, you know, give and take is appreciated. And I have to say, I do like the way it looks better. It just looks, if I was
You
gonna
do
move
too,
in there,
as
it
I
just,
said.
it does look good. But on, you know, what, I have to look at a resident of Lake Elmo. It's hard for me to see the building coming in, all of the building, but it's, you know, this is high density. I don't have a choice, you know, this is what it's zoned for. But I do want quality for what comes in. And by, you know, the percent or two, you know, whether it's hardy or vinyl, the hardy looks nicer. And when we put hardy on our house, they negate the warranty if you paint it. You don't paint hardy. If you do, your warranty is out the window, they told us. So it's not maintenance, I don't think, and it just looks so much better. And so that's why I would like to see it, the majority be in hardy board, because I think it just adds to the class and the quality of our area here. So I like the idea of more hardy board.
I have to pile on that as well. I think, you know, you're thinking about the initial cost of building and putting it on, but then you go away and the homeowner's left with vinyl siding, and when the storms come through, that vinyl just splits and cracks, and it's really garbage, and it's bad for our environment. I just have to believe there are other products that can be used that would be more durable, more appealing, something that looks a little higher standard.
I would say that the vinyl of today is not the vinyl of 20 years ago either.
It's still ugly.
I'd like to also voice a thing against the vinyl and for the hardy board. We have hardy board, we've had it for like 30 years, never had to paint it. So it is durable and it's fire resistant. And they just put a fourplex beside me and the entire thing is hardy board. And it was required there, so I don't know why we should be given preferential treatment somewhere else.
I don't have any other questions.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we need a motion?
Can you put that back up, please, Nathan? Thank you.
What Can you go back a screen? You had your 15 items there. Let's see, right there. No, I guess that wasn't. Must have been that next page. Let's go to that next one. Okay, I lost what it was.
So we need a motion to approve or deny, and if we deny, we need to provide findings on why to deny. But we can also have a motion to approve with conditions.
Would lean toward the conditions.
I move to recommend the approval of the comprehensive plan amendment request by MI Homes with conditions. And how do I end that one?
We've got
With
two
the-
motions that have to be filed, correct?
Oh, sorry.
Chair and
Did I-
One is the
did I goof
comprehensive
that
plan
up already?
amendment, the other one is the preliminary plat and PUD.
Okay, I goofed it up already,
Chair
sorry.
and Commissioners, the order is not necessarily an issue here, so that,
Okay.
the
Right.
comprehensive plan should be a
You're good.
separate motion.
Okay, so I can keep going. With the 15 conditions is listed by the city staff. Is that good? Is that complete? Okay.
Why don't you say that over?
Oh, I don't know how
Sorry,
I said it. Okay.
sorry.
I move to recommend that, the comprehensive plan amendment request by MI Homes with the 15 conditions proposed by the city staff. Did I get it all?
It's two separate things.
I think the
So we
15
don't, staff aren't necessarily recommending conditions for the comprehensive plan amendment. We
Okay,
are
somebody else
recommending
say it.
findings.
Somebody else
I
say
gotta
it.
say, I'm getting confused.
You know what I mean.
Move to recommend City Council approve the comprehensive plan amendment requested by M&I Homes for the subject property with the findings proposed by city staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
There you go.
Second, motion by Commissioner Char and seconded by Commissioner Hammond. Do we have discussion, do we want discussion? All in favor of the comprehensive plan amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the comprehensive plan amendment motion has been passed. Now to move on to the preliminary plat and PUD.
Oh. Do you want me to try this
Yeah, I think
again?
you should. I think you should reset the record.
All right, back up. I move to recommend the city council approve the preliminary plat and PUD for the Inwood townhome development requested by MI Homes with the 15 conditions discussed by the staff. Is that okay?
I'd like to be clear on what the 15 conditions are,
Well, I didn't write them all down.
because we have a list of 8 that got reduced to 7.
They're in the packet, page
Yeah,
10 and 11.
yeah. Chair, there in the packet, there are 15 conditions.
Okay?
I'll second that motion.
Discussion?
As I said previously, I appreciated the MI Homes coming back with their changes. It is approved, or it is set out to be a high-density area, and I would love to see some things like the vinyl siding, maybe the parallel parking, and especially the connectivity without removing trees, just because that is a high-density area, and I just worry about pedestrians and kids. I would like it as safe as possible for them.
Appreciate the work. It's a lot of work to do in a short amount of time, and MI Homes went back and did it, and Nathan, thank you for your work on it, reviewing it too. It's not perfect, and no development ever is in someone's eyes, but I think it's as good as it can get, given the constraints on the size of the property, and the developer needs to make a buck too, or else there's no point being a developer. There is still some conditions to work through, as outlined by city staff, and I'm sure that those things will get done, but that's why I'm generally in support.
Anyone else?
Yeah, once again, they did come back. This was originally denied by us at our other
It
meeting.
was not, it was tabled.
But it was denied first, and then it was tabled. That was rescinded.
Withdrew the deny motion.
Withdrew
So
it, right.
officially, it was
Was
not
not,
denied.
correct.
Well, I was sitting here, and so I know what happened too. But nevertheless, they did come back with it. I still have quite a bit of concern on safety, health safety, and the other residents that already live here, and what this impact's going to be with the construction traffic and things like that, going into this large of an endeavor just makes me really feel bad for the residents that are already there with the Hans Hagen development that went in initially. And this is quite dense, and I understand this is the high-density stuff that everybody wants now, but it's difficult for me to vote for it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I guess my only comments are on those 15 items. I think I would put the most emphasis personally on the item number 2 in revising the 90-degree parking, creating a sidewalk connectivity, and replacing the vinyl siding. I think if those things are achieved, that really improves the development in my mind.
My 2 cents, I think M&I has done a really nice job of coming back again and working with the city and staff and trying to meet all the conditions that were initially placed upon them over a month ago. I believe this development meets the initial plan that was laid out, although that did expire, but they're within the scope of what was initially planned here for this area, so it should be, I don't think it should be a surprise to anybody that this was coming, as it was always part of the plan. With that, I agree with the 15 conditions that are placed, the recommendations that are placed by staff, and it really has improved since the last time we saw it, so, thank you. With that, we'll move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
And with that, the move to recommend the city council approve the preliminary plat and PUD motion is passed. And on to our next agenda item. Thank you. If you'd like to stick around and hear the rest of our fun meeting, you're more than welcome to.
I would, but I have to go to another meeting.
All right.
Good choice.
And next on the agenda are communication updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. City staff recently updated the language within the mailed public hearing notice mailers. That ties into one of your items on the annual work plan. And the city, I believe, is rolling out a new website within the next few months, and that will also have more opportunities for communicating items and public hearings. City council updates: at April 15th, the Milestones daycare, which was in the old Rasmussen College site, that CUP passed. And then your next meetings are May 27th, which is a Tuesday, and June 9th.
Do we know if we're going to have a quorum on the 27th?
We will.
All right. Very good.
Very good.
All right. Any other last-minute discussions? There is no plans for this item. There is no, that we just discussed. It's not on council yet.
Correct. It's still waiting for an engineering review. Once we have all the reviews in, we'll schedule it for city council, but
Right.
it'll be before that June 14th deadline.
Okay, very good.
Or the developer will have to request more time.
Right. All right, with that, we will adjourn the Monday, May 12th, 2025 Lake Elmo Planning Commission meeting.